Season 3 of Beyond the Plate is presented by Martin's Famous Potato Rolls. All right, everyone, let me tell you how psyched I am that our partners at the National Mango Board are back. They were with us season 2, and we're all very excited to have them back on board, especially my wife, because she knows I'll have our kitchen fully stocked with mangoes. And our new twins, because they're digging the mangoes too. Anyhow, I digress. Did you know that mangoes are the most commonly consumed fruit in the world? Love these little stats. Or did you know that they've been cultivated for over 5,000 years? How about their endless health benefits? I could go on and on and on, but actually one of the cooler things is that they're available all year round. What does that mean for you? It means that every day is mango season. 6 different varieties in the US. Have some fun with it. I've done this myself. Buy a few different varieties. If you see them in the store, do a little side-by-side taste test. See which one you like the most. I love mangoes, as I mentioned. I love them in tons of different ways, but I'll tell you something I'm obsessed with right now. There's a Malaysian restaurant in Chicago called Sarai, and they have a mango chicken dish on the menu. Delicious. Okay, here's something else pretty cool. Mango industry empowers farmers in regions around the world who for generations have been growing mangoes. There's endless ways to enjoy mangoes, like I said, so if you need a little more mango inspo or want to learn more about National Mango Board, check out mango.org or follow them on social media at Mango Board. National Mango Board, we thank you. We got started, but before we get started, you may have been like, who's this horribly dressed guy with...
Actually, I was going to ask you, can we talk about your Adidas for a second?
Yeah.
Because I've never seen them. Tell me everything about them.
They are the Pharrell
so.
Stan Smith collab. And these are like a year or two old.
They're very good.
They're so comfortable.
Were you about to make fun of your own personal style or something?
Yeah, because that's my wife's job and she does that all the time.
No, you look great. And you have freaking Pharrell limited edition Adidas.
Amazing.
And like everyone loves an Adidas. I'm literally wearing Continentals right now.
Yeah. And by the way, ham and cheese on an Adidas shoe you have?
Yeah.
That's
in
brilliant.
French. And then I have Speedy Popo, which is my nickname in college.
I'm not going to ask. Don't?
Not worth it.
Okay, good.
If you know Sean King,
I'll ask Sean.
I'll leave it at that. You can ask him.
Welcome to Beyond the Plate, a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey with food and their passion for giving back. I'm Cappy, and in this week's episode, we sat with Antoni Porowski. Do I even have to say who this man is? He's Queer Eye's food and wine connoisseur. We caught up in the lobby of a hotel in Chicago while he was coming through town on book tour, and we shot the stuff. I brought him pierogies. He has a Polish background. I brought him stuffed cabbage, both of these from one of my favorite neighborhood Polish restaurants in Chicago. I also brought him a special message in Polish from a Polish grandmother. So essentially, I started off on the right foot. We talk food, cooking, how he got into cooking. We talk about Poland. We talk about Canada, where he grew up. We also talk about his brand new New York Times best-selling cookbook, Antoni in the Kitchen. And my favorite part, to be honest, wait until he goes off on his social impact commitments, his dedication to pride, to hunger in America, to suicide prevention. Talk about using your voice for good. I'm going to stop right now, but please enjoy this conversation as we go beyond the plate with Antoni Porowski. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Just for anybody who doesn't get to see this, / everybody, because there are no cameras, making a lovely iced almond milk latte.
I thought it was oat milk.
Is it oat milk? It's almond.
But aren't you an oat milk guy?
I'm obsessed with Oatly.
Yeah.
Because it's so thick.
I'll tell you something. Chobani is working on an oat milk that I saw at a restaurant show that's not for sale yet. I was like, you guys make this now? And they're like, well, it's not out. We're just testing it. And it was really good.
But it's interesting that a dairy company is making.
Wow.
Yeah. Has a dairy company ever done? I assume Oatly hasn't because their name is literally oat.
Right.
But wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to check it out. I love my dairy, but I'm obsessed with oat milk.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. Also, City Harvest. I know you've done work with them. I've done a lot of work with their leadership council and stuff. So we'll get into a little bit of that. But thank you. Your voice for a cause like that is incredible. So
they're an important one.
Yeah. So this isn't like leftover food. This is actually food from one of my favorite Polish restaurants in Chicago.
What did you get?
It's
gołąbki,
pierogies and stuffed cabbage.
I knew it was gołąbki because I see the tomato sauce sticking out of the side of the styrofoam.
It's from a restaurant called Podhalanka.
Oh my gosh.
But beyond...
Are you just bragging that you picked up Polish food?
Well, I'm kind of bragging, but also it's a woman who owns it. She's had this restaurant for 33 years and she made a video for you.
Stop.
I don't know what she said.
Oh my gosh, she's going to speak in Polish. Okay. You know what? I'm also wearing headphones, so that's not really good. It doesn't work that way.
Witam, dzień dobry. To jest miejsce Podhalanka restaurant. Ja mam tą restaurację 33 lata.
I've had this restaurant for 33 years.
do Stanów z Krakowa.
She's from Krakow.
Mamy dużą tu rodzinę zarazem.
I have a huge family.
Lubię moją pracę.
I love my job.
Produkujemy wszystkie jedzenie tutaj sami.
We make everything from scratch here.
Gotujemy zupy domowe,
Homemade soups, gołąbki, naleśniki, crepes, pierogis.
Dużo innych miejsc. Jestem zadowolona.
Oh, a lot of places don't make their own.
Lubię tą
I'm proud of what I like and I love what I do.
Lubię produkować to wszystko.
And I really like producing all of it.
I nabywców kocham, klientów moich.
I really love my clients.
Myślę, że ty będziesz zadowolony z tego, że
you're going to be happy about the fact that you're going to try my food.
I będziesz miał dobry czas.
And you're going to have a good time in Chicago eating it. Chicago's a special city. It's a beautiful city.
A zarazem
a great
dużo
city.
było polskich restauracji.
There used to be a lot of Polish restaurants, but now there aren't.
Dużo restauracji zostało zamkniętych na mojej okolicy, na północy.
Most of them is closed, but in the north there are still a few. I'm sending you love, and I wish you have a really nice time. And so she's wearing a coral, kind of like a knit T-shirt with a black apron. And she has pretty much an Anna Wintour haircut.
Yes.
And she could not look more Polish.
Yeah. How amazing. I love this woman.
Gosh. If I wasn't trying to translate so quickly, I probably would have gotten emotional, and Polish babcie for me are like...
I told
Forget
her,
about it.
Just say, hi, Antoni, welcome to Chicago. I hope you like my food. And like a minute later, she was still going. I was like, I hope she's being nice.
She was being very nice. But there was a little like a little underlying message about gentrification in there without really saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's happened.
I get
where
it.
she is.
Yeah.
You grew up in Canada.
Grew up in Canada.
Polish roots.
That's
clearly.
Yep, that's why I was able to translate.
Yes, you weren't guessing.
First language that I learned, even though my parents were born. My father was born in Brussels. My mother was born in Warsaw, and then I was the first one of my family born outside of Europe. But I had to learn, like, Polish was the first language I learned, and then French came after, and then English came from TV.
Growing up, tell us what your family table was like. Was there family dinner?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I'm trying to think, like, special occasion or on any given night.
Any given night.
Any given night. Okay, well, I'll start with breakfast.
Oh.
So my dad doesn't cook. Well, he cooks now, but he didn't really cook growing up except for barbecue season, which is basically 6 weeks in the summer in Montreal when there isn't 8 feet of snow. Slight exaggeration. But he would make breakfast. And for breakfast, we always had a massive spread of fruit. And so we would have like whole papaya with a bit of salt and lime juice. And then like he would just cut everything up and have like a big, I always went after the berries because I was obsessed with blackberries. Tons of charcuterie, a lot of cheeses.
How often was this?
This was like every weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we always had a really big breakfast spread, sometimes eggs, but we didn't really eat eggs. It was more of like a, I guess, is that called a continental, where it's like you don't have to cook things?
Yeah.
It's like our version of the Porowski version of a continental breakfast. And then for dinner, my mother would go to town all the time. Like it was always at least like a 2 or 3 course situation where my parents would travel a lot. So they would come back with recipes. And so they would come back with dishes from different places. Like when they went to Morocco, they came back and we had tagine for a month. When she'd come back from Poland, we would have all kinds of cheeses and things that she would bring back from there. And oscypek, which was, this is a very Polish episode today. I don't only eat Polish food. I just want to throw that out there, except we're in Chicago and you brought me Polish food. So it's like the topic at hand.
That's right.
Oscypek is this smoked cheese. cheese that has a beautiful little, like a nice ambery rind on it, and you put it on a pan and it melts and it just gets crispy along the edges. It's like super smoky.
Interesting.
And then you have it with kind of like lingonberry or some kind of like a cranberry type jam situation, and it's a great little hors d'oeuvre. It's literally just cheese and jam.
I need to look into
Not even any
this.
bread.
I need to look
I'm
into
sure they
it.
have some great oscypek in Chicago. It's Oscypek. So then we would have like a nice little, it would really be based on where my parents would go traveling, and that's sort of like what we would eat for a while.
Was there a connection to food with your mom or dad?
No, not at all. No, my father's a physician and my mother was a model, and then she studied medicine, but she never practiced.
Who was in charge in the kitchen?
My mother and no one else.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you help her?
Nope. Wasn't allowed.
Never?
Nope.
You weren't allowed?
Wasn't allowed. Just would sit and watch.
Were you tempted?
So she was very...
Was she like, get out of the kitchen?
It was just more, I didn't feel welcome in the kitchen, where it was just sort of like that was clearly her turf. She served the plates, she brought them to the table like it was her thing. And I judged, like for a long time, it really frustrated me in my 20s, but then I realized I'm the exact same way. It's very hard for me to ask for help in the kitchen because I like things to be done a certain way.
Sure.
But I'm learning to...
So if you're in a party and 10 people come in, what can I do? You're like, just go.
I'm getting better because some people are just being polite, and that's when it's like, you know what, just stand around the counter, have some like cheese and charcuterie, and just you can go change the music if you want or light some candles. But some people genuinely want to help, and they should be able to.
Yeah.
I feel like it makes people feel like they're part of the process. They can learn something, and they feel like they've created something as well. I can be very collaborative in a lot of different things and a lot of different like parts of my work, but in the kitchen, that's a challenge because I just want it to be a very specific way.
I agree with you. I'm similar.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But to me, Nosrat makes everyone cook when they come over.
That's not easy though.
It's not easy.
I'm on Team Antoni here. You're self-taught in the kitchen though.
Yes.
How did you learn?
I learned when I was no longer living with my parents. So I guess I was like 17 or 18 and I moved out. I was starting university or maybe a year into it. And I moved in with my college buddy, Nabil, and his parents were in Beirut and in Budapest. And then my parents were between the US and Canada. And we were just basically like these lost boys who like had to fend for themselves. It wasn't that bad. It was a really nice condo, but I'm making it a lot more dramatic than it needs to be. But we didn't want to just like eat pizza every single night. And like we knew what it was like having nice home cooked meals growing up. So the first thing I ever made was like an eggplant parm because that's what he wanted. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing. The oil was cold when I put the eggplant in. So it was just a mushy, oily mess. But then I learned that the oil has to be hot and that you don't just put it in breadcrumbs because that just doesn't cling to eggplant. And you have to salt your eggplant to release the moisture, to like concentrate the flavors. And it was like, so it was just kind of like figuring it out as I went along and just watching, YouTube videos and reading cookbooks. And then I was always extremely curious. And I would try something, and this I've been doing since I was a little kid. Like I would try something at a restaurant and be like, okay, well, I want to try, like I tried halibut with like a corn salsa for the first time. And then I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I noticed that there was like, I think a bit of speck or like koto ham or something. And then I was like, oh, wow, meat with fish. That actually really works well. And then I would just try to like experiment with that as I kind of got older.
Was there a first thing you ever cooked as a kid, or did you really not get going in the kitchen till later on?
I really didn't. So there's this,
there's something here.
I was always obsessed with cheese. And there's this thing, I don't know if it still exists, but it's basically, we weren't allowed to have junk food at home. And the closest thing to it was this cheese brand called Imperial Cheese. And it was a red plastic tub with a black lid. And they sold it at Costco because you can get the larger one. It was basically very fancy, sharp Cheese Whiz, but it was very dense. And so I would put it in a bowl and microwave it until it was almost burnt so that it would get crispy along the edges. And I would eat the crispy bits and then microwave it again and then dip a couple of crackers in it, but basically only eat the cheese. That was my quote unquote cooking.
Yeah, this is genius though. There's a cheese here, it's made in Wisconsin, I believe, called Merck's. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's like super sharp, spreadable cheese, and a lot of the Chicago-style hot dog stands that we have here use it for their French fries or burgers. But what happens, they leave it, the tub, it comes in a tub.
Yeah.
They leave it in the steam table so it gets like mixable, pliable. incredibly addicting and delicious.
It's so
and
nice.
This is
and
what
if
reminds me
it
of.
burns along the edges, especially, and I'm not here to promote microwave usage, but like that was probably the first thing that I ever made.
I love it.
Or like Kraft Dinner mac and cheese when my parents were traveling and we had somebody who took care of us and she let us eat food like that.
Yeah.
And then I would add my own cheese to it because it was never enough cheese.
I love this. Hey everyone, so sorry to interrupt. Wanted to really quickly share a little about Cook Tracks because you may have seen this pop up into your feed if you subscribe to Beyond the Plate. Cook Tracks is a project we've been working on for well over a year now. It's a brand new way to cook. So if you follow at Cook Tracks on Instagram, you may have noticed a lot of people are starting to cook along with these episodes and really enjoying it. So if you haven't checked it out, give Cook Tracks a listen or a cook. In each episode, a chef or culinary personality is right alongside you. Well, kind of. You're listening to them, so they're in your ear, taking you step by step through a dish or a meal in real time. So you're going to hear tips, tricks, stories to keep you entertained while you're really upping your cooking game. So no recipe reading needed, no pausing, playing a video, stopping, starting. It's fantastic. We currently have 6 episodes with some of the best chefs and cooks we know: Rachel Ray, Gail Simmons, Rocco DeSpirito, Stephanie Iser, Jimmy Papadopoulos. For more information and updates, check out cooktracks.com or on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Okay, thanks for listening. Okay, so into the food world as a chef, a cook, you worked in restaurants. Yes. What was your first restaurant job?
First restaurant job was a group of these 3 restaurants owned by these like Italian guys in Montreal, and it was one was called Mediterraneo, one was called Baila, and then Buonanotte. And Buonanotte is where I ended up, and it was basically a supper club. So they had all Italian chefs in the kitchen, real deal pizza oven, fresh pasta, awesome, very traditional Italian food. That's where I started learning how to speak Italian, because I've always been interested in food and languages as well. So
you speak Italian?
I can read in Italian and I can understand, but speaking it, like, it's like tennis. It's like if you don't do it, then I have to like practice it and then it comes to me.
You're making me feel real bad. You speak
you know
like
what?
3 languages
but most of the time I don't really know what city I'm in. I don't know directions to my own apartment, and I get lost all the time. So it balances itself
4
out.
languages.
Oh, well.
All right. Back to your first job.
So Buonanotte, I was a busboy there, and then I was a runner. And then being a runner was when I really got interested, because I got to be in the kitchen more, and I used to watch the chefs prepare. Because as a busser, you're just running front to back, and you're just cleaning things up all the time. But with a runner, you get to present the dish, and you get to explain it. And that's when I got to explain food in Italian, which was like I've had 2 envies in my life, Italian and Jewish envy. And so I got to pretend to be Italian and speak Italian whenever I was serving these dishes. So that was like, it felt like a dream job at the time.
Hilarious. Oh. Now I'm curious about the Jewish envy, being a Jew.
Okay, so I took 23andMe recently, and I found out I'm 5% Ashkenazi.
Really?
Which a little disappointing, because I was really hoping for double digits, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. How exciting.
It is really exciting, because it just makes sense, because I've always had Jewish friends growing up. I've always been drawn to Jewish people. And so to have that validation is really,
yeah. I love that. So you loved working in restaurants, explaining the dishes. Do you miss it?
It was a different time in my life. I mean, working in restaurants, not to generalize, but a lot of us, like, you know, it's a different life. Like, you go out after you're done with your shift. It's like a manic rush, and you don't just go home and go to sleep. Maybe if you're a normal person, but I am not that. And so I was studying psychology, taking acting classes after my university studies, like during the day. And then at night I would go work in a restaurant, and then I would go out. So I was sleeping like 3 to 4 hours a night, but I was like living my best life. I was loving it at the time.
Okay. So could we talk about the Village Den?
Yeah.
Tell us about the Village Den.
So Village Den was a beloved diner in New York, right on the corner of 7th Ave and Greenwich. And, you know, I had 2 buddies of mine, Eric Marks and Lyle Richards, who run the Metric Group.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we have this really obnoxiously douchey name of a little club called Workout Club, and we just basically go with different trainers in the city, and we do little workout classes, and we do like from spin classes to like calisthenic stuff to like Rumble to literally anything. We just kind of run around the city in the mornings, and we always wanted a place that we wanted to go munch afterwards. Instead of going to their restaurant Wayfare uptown all the time, we found out that Village Den was closing, unfortunately, as most diners are in New York, and there was a lease opportunity. So we decided to take over, and we wanted to open up. Like our dream was always like have a place that just has like the kind of food that we want to eat after working out when we're famished, starving, but just not feel like human garbage afterwards. And so we kind of just jumped on it. And then they take over like in terms of like operations and logistics and all of that. And I'm purely focused on food and menu development, which I'd never done before. As most things I've never done until about 2 years ago. So
do you enjoy that part of it?
I loved it.
That's fine.
I loved it. I mean, it was so many edits because I came up with all of like what my dream recipes would be. Then they were like, no, you have to use the sweet potato like in 4 different dishes. You can't just use it in one because that's not how restaurants like that work. And they cut out, they cut out all the dairy because it's like a healthy, spot. And a lot of people are on the non-dairy train now, unfortunately. And I myself leave dairy for weekends and I go aggressive on a nice cheese board. But during the week, I tend to stay away from it. And it actually keeps me going longer and I don't get as sleepy.
Really?
Yeah. Dairy and carbs.
You go no dairy, no carbs during the week?
During the week. I mean, if there's like a great loaf in front of me, I will. I'm not super, And
weekends, you're like, give me cheese.
Just give me a freaking baguette. Give me like a shome or like the stinkiest ass cheese you can find. And like, let's find a fig spread and just go to town.
I feel like I'm going to have that for dinner tonight. Just
latkes on Saturdays and Sundays, like whatever. I have no holds barred on weekends.
Sour cream and applesauce on latkes or no?
Separate. I like applesauce, but if I have 4 latkes, I'll have 3 with sour cream and then I'll have 1 with applesauce.
Interesting. I have a family in South Florida, and they do sugar on their latkes. Have you heard this?
I love sugar on latkes. Okay,
I've never heard about it.
So Stash Cafe, the Polish restaurant where I worked in Montreal years after Buonanotte, they have the naleśniki, which are the crepes, which your lovely friend was mentioning in the video. Polish people take full-fat sour cream, a little bit of vanilla, and sugar. It's tangy and so good.
I have like a backlog of things I have to eat and make after this.
It's so good. And you put that on latkes and it's freaking awesome. It's so nice.
And now I need to go to the Village Den and...
On weekdays.
Yeah, on weekdays.
And then you can cook, I don't know if this is a segue or not, but you can cook from Antoni in the kitchen on the weekends.
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there.
I've heard you talk about food being romantic. Risotto, omelets, explain.
I mean, I think food is so many things, but I think it is incredibly romantic. There's something very like intimate and sensual about eating. It's something on a first date, hopefully you go to a restaurant and it's not just drinks and you get to like share food together. It's also like a really good first test. You know how often people say the beginning of a relationship, like go on a trip, or maybe not the beginning, but a little later on, maybe beginning if you're me, because I rush into things. But if if you go to a restaurant and you share a meal with someone, just knowing how they order, the kind of food that they eat. Like, is this someone I want to hang out with? Is this somebody who eats like me?
So many people have crushes on you. Who's your celebrity crush?
My celebrity crush? I don't think I have one right now. I'll tell you who my first 2 crushes ever were. Well, okay, I have 4. My first ever was probably Gwen Stefani when she was in No Doubt.
Nice.
The video for I'm Just a Girl. And then Aaliyah, R.I.P. But I just thought she was like the most stunning, beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life.
Love that.
And then things changed when I saw Cruel Intentions. I think it's a 1996 or 1999 classic. And I was very sort of confused because there was this awesome scene with Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar. So I thought I loved both of them. But then there was also Ryan Phillippe. So I wasn't really sure what the hell to think. But that probably remains one of my favorite movies of all time. From
That's a good one.
The musical score to the soundtrack to the styling, the way that they dressed. I don't know if they had the same stylist, but the clothing reminds me a lot of, a wardrobe reminds me a lot of, have you seen Great Expectations? Gwyneth Paltrow and Ethan Hawke at their prime.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not a huge movie guy.
Okay. You have to see Great
Rachel
Expectations.
Ray is a movie person, so like every time I'm with her, she's like, Cap, what's that movie? I'm like, and now when she starts to ask, she's like, oh, screw you. You don't watch movies.
Check out Great Expectations. Have you seen Cruel Intentions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's an important film.
Yes. I'm going to watch Great Expectations.
You should watch it. I really think you'll love it. It's Yeah.
So let's talk about your book.
Yeah. I don't even remember what the hell the question was. I just managed to go on.
Celeb crush.
Oh, got it. Right,
And then
right,
you gave
right.
movie reviews and wardrobe reviews.
Sounds about right. It's very on brand for me. So,
Antoni in the Kitchen. Mm-hmm. Beautiful book.
Thank you.
Why did you decide to write a book now?
I think...
By the way, cheers on all your press, and because you are like all over the place.
Awesome.
And
Thank
it's
you.
Super exciting.
Thank you. Yeah. The idea for the book basically came along. I tend to say I say yes to a lot of things, and I think being in this in the food world was not something that I ever thought I would do publicly. It was something that was always kind of more private. So when Queer Eye kind of came about, I think it gave me, to use Jonathan Van Ness's expression, it gave me permission to actually start thinking about those kinds of things. And a cookbook was one that came up, and my reaction was like complete and utter fear when we started discussing it with my agents. And
fear of what?
I think the fear came from the fact that I've never written a single recipe down. Knowing that cookbooks are at least 50 recipes, I was thinking like, I definitely don't know 50 things to make. And just kind of like, and the amount of work that goes into it. I worked for Ted Allen. I know how much work and like months and how many people go into the whole process.
Yeah, it can be a grueling process.
Yeah,
like cookbook. So I feel what you're saying. Like it could inhibit fear.
Yeah, and it was like right before we started filming our Kansas City episodes, seasons 3 and 4 of Queer Eye. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a shit ton of work. Coming up with recipes. I've never measured anything in my life. Everything is always with my hand, which is like 2 normal people's handfuls. So it was like all of it just really intimidated me. But I really get off on fear. That's, kind of like when Queer Eye came about, I was also met with like a total paralyzing fear, but I decided to run for it anyway.
How do you get through that?
Oh, I go straight through. If the cliff is like,
you don't like overanalyze it. You're just like, go.
Oh, I sure do. But I like still run towards it. Like I really get off on just being like, I love being uncomfortable in like awkward social situations or like a weird Uber driver. Like I want to engage with that person. I just want to see what they have to say. Yeah.
So interesting.
Or if like I speak to somebody who likes the show and comes up and says something nice, and if there's something that feels a little off, like I'll talk to them for way too long.
I'm that guy.
That's
so cool.
Because even if it's like a weird kind of like interaction, it still makes for a really good story.
Got it.
And life should be fun.
For sure.
So the cookbook intimidated the hell out of me, and I was thinking, I would have to write it while I'm filming 2 seasons of Queer Eye. Perfect, let's do it. So literally wrote the book with Mindy Fox, who was in Portland, Maine, on the East Coast, and we would FaceTime and call and text every day, all day. Literally from set, I would take 5 minutes break and text her, and she would give me an update on the recipe she was trying. And Amazing. I realized that I forgot to add 2 eggs or whatever it was. And then, so it was like in constant communication.
Wow. Let's transition really quick to social impact. Giving back, a lot of what we do for this podcast is that. I know you've supported City Harvest, and I also see causes like the Trevor Project.
Yeah.
Can you share more about these organizations or projects, or where you give your support and why?
Sure. I think, when Queer Eye sort of came out and I started understanding the definition or kind of like the meaning behind visibility, and, you have foundations that start reaching out to you, and we had meetings with GLAAD, and Trevor Project was one of them as well. And like some of the reps decided to sort of speak to us because we realized that we did have a voice. I want to say yes to everything, but what I'm learning is that I really try to pick organizations and foundations that I can really get behind, where I have some kind of a personal attachment, because then I'm able to promote it organically.
Sure.
Because I want to be careful with that kind of stuff. Just the way, not to treat these as endorsements, but like with an endorsement, you try to pick something that fits, and I try to do the same with everything. And so City Harvest was a natural fit. There's a little bit of a lineage component because Ted Allen has talked about it for years working for him, and he's hosted events for them and presented and donated and given his time and social media efforts. So that was one that was like a natural fit, and I love everything that they stand for. And I think that there's a massive waste problem, not only in grocery stores, but in restaurants as well. And there's so many people who don't have food. I think No Kid Hungry is another really important one that I want to start working with as well, that I started with Williams Sonoma.
Yeah, you did the special, right?
Yes.
I'm on their leadership council.
Oh, awesome.
No Kid Hungry.
Awesome.
They're awesome.
Trevor Project is a really important one as well. I had, since I first got my blue check on Instagram, and I realized that like people are watching. I've always had a suicide prevention hotline, and recently I switched it over to Trevor Project just to get a little bit more LGBTQIA plus awareness. Yeah, I just try to keep it as honest as possible, so that I, I'm not an expert in the field, but it's something that I'm just kind of like figuring out as I go. Recently, in a northern city of Poland called Białystok, they had their first Pride March ever. And people started tagging me in these videos of these marchers. I think I want to say there were 1,000 marchers, and then there were 4,000 anti-marchers, a lot of them from the Catholic Church, who basically were throwing flour at these marchers. And then I found out later on in some articles I read that they actually had rocks thrown at them as well. And so people were tagging me on Twitter, and I saw these videos, and I was super triggered by it. And it just so that got me to like write a couple of op-eds for Washington Post. And
good for you.
So it's, like the whole idea that because it's happening somewhere else, we're not really responsible for it is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And the fact that I do have a Polish name, I have a lot of like young Polish people who reach out and are like, oh, I can't believe that you kept your name, but you definitely don't speak the language. I always want to respond and be like, yes, I know the language. I promise. I'm not as good as it as I was as a kid, but like I can still speak it. But I think it's always any opportunity I have to do anything. Sometimes it's like physically going there. And sometimes it's just like social media is really insanely powerful. Like there was a petition being signed by All Out, which is a worldwide organization. And they basically train people on how to be activists, on how to do it right, so that they don't put their lives in danger, and they know how to do it properly. And they started signing a petition now, and they've received over 50,000 votes, and they're going to be delivering it to the European Commission, which is a subsidiary or department of the European Union, to basically threaten funding to Poland if they don't do something about it.
Wow.
Because what's going on in Poland right now is just absolutely terrifying, and it's hard to see it. It's like knowing, like I've walked Pride recently last summer in Montreal safely. Yes, I'm on a show and I was protected, and it's like a whole different experience than most people are able to have. But like knowing that other people were able to do it safely, and then I did it in New York this year for Stonewall 50 safely, and then I see the country where my parents come from where people aren't able to do that. Like that's a really big disconnect, and people should be able to do that freely wherever they can. And it was really shitty what happened there, but at the same time, we also have to address that this was their first Pride March ever. So it was messy, and it's not great, but the fact that they actually had their first one is pretty freaking awesome, and we have to like continue to give a lot of attention and like put the spotlight on them so that people know that they can't behave that way.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
And for your voice. That goes a long way, as you are seeing.
No, it's important.
Let's lighten it up really quick. Speed round. What did you have for dinner last night?
What did I have for dinner last night? Oh, I had Nando's. I had a Nando's chicken sandwich with 3 orders of halloumi, half a container of the almonds and cashews. And then there was a halloumi salad, and I just ate the halloumi and left the salad. And then I had 4 baby Swiss rolls that someone brought us from some really lovely bakery in Washington, D.C. And I had a black iced coffee that someone got me, but it had a lot of sugar in it, and I wish that it was black because I like my iced coffee black and bitter.
Lovely. Yum. I'm
I feel like
hungry.
I was missing something. Nope, that was it.
Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Oh, lemon. If my lemons are getting old, I throw them in the freezer, and then I throw them in the incinerator, in the garbage disposal thing, and then it makes your kitchen smell really nice.
Brilliant tip alert. Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Oh, chicken carcass when I don't have scented bags in the rubbish, in the garbage.
Canadian maple syrup or New York State maple syrup?
Canadian. But what's better than Canadian? Vermont maple syrup.
Oh, there you go. If you could help any celeb, athlete, actor, musician, politician create the ultimate dinner party, who would it be?
Not because I think they have anything wrong with them, but I would just want to hang out with her because 30 Rock is the greatest show ever written for television, and Tina Fey is a living legend. Tina Fey.
Tina Fey. Closing. You pick up a newspaper to read a review about your book. What does the headline say?
What? I'm usually good at speed round. What does the headline say?
In all fairness, speed round ended.
Oh, gotcha. The headline says, you know what? The headline is, it's going to be a story. It's going to be basically whoever decided to write the headline wrote, I was inspired by the book to look back at my own culinary story and look at the dishes that have shaped me.
Love it. Last, what advice do you want to give 2029 Antoni Porowski?
What are we, 2019? So 10 years from now, you do not need an 18-bedroom Tuscan villa. Go with the 3-bedroom. And don't eat so much pasta now that you're retired and living in Italy. Don't forget to eat your veggies.
I love it. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. This was super fun.
Yeah,
I appreciate
I had a
your
blast.
time. Yeah, thank you. And
Thank
you for all you do to give back for the different causes, because it's hugely helpful. Your voice, your time, all that good
Thanks
stuff.
for saying that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Awesome. Quote, I want to say yes to everything, but what I'm learning is that I really try to pick organizations and foundations I can really get behind where I have some kind of personal attachment. Since I first got my blue check on Instagram and I realized people are watching, I've always had a suicide prevention hotline. Thanks again to Antoni Porowski. Find more on him at antoniporowski.com. Find me and keep up to date with this podcast across all social media platforms at On Cappy's Plate, or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com. Beyond the Plate is on Twitter at BT Plate Podcast and Facebook. Thanks to our partners at Martin's Famous Potato Rolls. Martin's was founded in the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country in 1955. They are the #1 branded hamburger bun in America, and as I like to say, they can make almost any burger taste better. Let's focus on the good old potato bread, everybody. You're going to hear a little bit about potato bread in next week's Just a Plate episode with Antoni, because he talks about it. His is from a bakery that him and his dad go to in Vermont. But listen up, back in 1955, this is kind of how Martin started, out of a garage, literally. That's right, Martin's Famous Pastry Shop is an all-American family-owned and operated company, and Lloyd and Lois Martin literally converted their garage into a small bakery. Hear more on that in Beyond the Plate Season 2, Episode 13. Fan favorite episode, everybody. Here's what I love about Martin's. Martin's believes in giving back to their community. They support hundreds of charitable organizations, such as food banks, after-school programs, disaster relief, and others. To learn more about Martin's, visit their website at potatorolls.com or follow them on social at Potato Rolls. Martin's, we thank you. This episode was produced by myself along with Ian Cohen, Joe Yeaton, and Shant Petrosian. Thank you to Tom Osborne. Our music has been composed by Goldford. As always, special shout out to my wife, Katie. Please rate, review, and or subscribe to this podcast on your listening site of choice. Join us next week for Just a Play when Antoni talks about his dad's ham sandwich. Basically, I ask him Polish ham or French ham, and he goes off into a ham sandwich recipe. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.